Okay, so get this. SpaceX, right. They just pulled off something straight out of a movie. Remember those claw machines? Imagine one that snagged, get this, a rocket booster as it came back from space.
And not just any rocket booster, we're talking the super heavy, the first stage of their Starship system. I mean, this thing is massive, taller than the Statue of Liberty.
It's like catching a skyscraper in midair. It's wild. But here's the thing. This isn't just for show. It's not just like a cool trick.
Exactly. It's all about changing how we think about space travel, making it more affordable. Think about it. If we threw away airplanes after every flight, tickets would be astronomically expensive.
Right. That's what's so intriguing about this. It's not just that they could catch a rocket. It's that they're trying to revolutionize space travel.
Yeah, reusability. That's the key. Imagine a spaceship that can go to orbit, come back, refuel, and head right back out.
Okay, so how does this even work? We're not talking about grabbing a teddy bear here.
It's pretty incredible. They got this system on their launch tower called Mechazilla. How cool is that name? It uses these gigantic robotic arms to catch the booster. They call them chopsticks.
Chopsticks. For something that powerful, I mean, the articles I read said the Super Heavy generates more thrust than any rocket in history, twice as much as the Saturn V rockets from Apollo.
It's a mind-boggling amount of power. Nearly 17 million pounds of thrust. Like 140 jumbo jets taking off at once.
So walk us through it. What happens after the booster launches the Starship?
Well, after separating from Starship, the booster has to make a controlled descent back to the launch site. Basically, a controlled fall from space.
Controlled fall from space. Easy, right.
Right. They use those powerful engines to steer and slow down from over 5,000 miles per hour.
5,000 miles per hour? That's like flying from New York to LA in like 20 minutes.
And then Mechazilla's chopsticks snag the booster out of the air and place it back on the launch mount. It's like threading a needle, except the needle is hurtling towards the Earth at thousands of miles per hour, and the thread is a giant robot arm.
And all this is happening live. The articles mention the flight director has to make split-second decisions based on how the booster and the tower are doing. I wouldn't want that job.
It's high-stakes decision-making, for sure. They can't program every single thing. They need human intuition and adaptability in real time.
And they nailed it. From launch to catch, just 7 minutes.
7 minutes to launch a vehicle designed for deep space missions, separate the stages, and catch the booster. That's changing the game.
Speaking of changing the game, where did that Starship portion end up? The one that kept going after the booster came back.
While the booster was heading back, the Starship continued on its test flight, and it eventually splashed down in the Indian Ocean. That's how they've been landing their Falcon 9 boosters.
Which actually makes you wonder about the environmental impact of all this. Launching giant rockets can't be great for the planet, can it?
Yeah, that's the big question, isn't it? It's all cool to watch, but, I mean, giant rockets.
Yeah.
Not exactly known for being eco-friendly.
Right, it's a balance. Space exploration and taking care of our planet. SpaceX is really upfront about that. See, the old way of doing things, the single-use rockets, those were rough on the environment.
So by reusing the spacecraft, they're cutting down on a lot of that, even with the emissions from each launch.
Exactly. Think of it like driving a gas guzzler that you have to replace all the time versus an electric car you just recharge. Long-term, reusable rockets, way more sustainable.
Okay, so it's a step in the right direction.
Oh, definitely. And there's always more to learn, right? The whole environmental impact thing is complex, especially with those methane emissions.
Methane, that's what Starship uses for fuel, right?
Yeah.
Right, methane. And they're still figuring out the long-term effects of that. But, speaking of pushing boundaries, SpaceX, they've got their hands in a lot of things. Like, remember that NASA project, the Artemis program?
The one to get us back on the moon. Yeah, I remember all the hype. It's been in the works for a while, hasn't it? Is this a new program or is it like a reboot of an older one?
Same goal. New urgency, you can say. NASA, they want boots back on the moon by 2026. And guess what? Starship, it's a big part of the plan.
Hold on. You mean that same rocket we're talking about? The one that just made a splash landing? That thing could be taking astronauts to the moon in just a couple of years.
That's the idea.
It's mind-blowing. And of course, Elon Musk, he's not stopping at the moon, is he? He's got Mars on his mind, right?
Always. Colonizing Mars, making us a multiplanetary species, that's the dream.
It's funny, isn't it? Every time we make a big leap in space, Mars is right there, like the next logical step. But this time, it feels different. Like, this catch, it proves something. They're not just talking, they're actually doing it. Do you think, realistically, will we see humans on Mars in our lifetime?
That's the million-dollar question. Will we be watching people walk on Mars in the next few decades? Who knows? But one thing's for sure. SpaceX is challenging all the old assumptions. Remember those early Starship tests, the ones that ended in those, well, pretty dramatic explosions?
Oh, yeah.
And now they're catching boosters in midair. It happened fast. And that's the thing about SpaceX. They try, they learn, they adapt. That's how they've come so far so quickly. And that's what makes all of this so exciting. We're seeing progress in real time.
For so long, space travel felt, impossible. Like we just shoot rockets off and hope for the best. But this feels different. It feels like control. Like we're actually starting to figure this whole space thing out.
Exactly. It's not about just visiting space anymore. It's about learning how to operate there to make it, dare I say, normal.
And that changes everything, doesn't it? From this big, scary unknown to something that might become, well, as routine as catching a rocket.
I love that. It's the perfect way to put it. But this all begs the question, what does it mean for the average person? Aside from, ooh, cool, a rocket catch, how does this actually affect our lives?
Right, because at the end of the day, it's got to be about more than just spectacle.
It has to be. It has to mean something for humanity.
Yeah, it's got to make a difference somehow. Right.
Absolutely. I mean, think about satellites, for example. What if we could launch them for, like, a fraction of the cost?
Okay, yeah.
That would be huge. Communications, Earth observation, all that stuff would become way more accessible.
Kind of like when the internet first took off, right? It got cheaper, easier to use, and suddenly, boom, it changed everything.
Exactly. And who knows what incredible innovations will come out of this. New industries popping up, scientific discoveries, maybe even new ways to tackle climate change.
And hey, maybe even that space tourism thing we were talking about.
Right.
Maybe that's closer than we think.
Don't rule it out. I mean, SpaceX is already talking about launching a new Starship mission within an hour of returning to the launch pad. An hour.
An hour? Seriously, that's insane.
It's about speed. They want to make space travel routine.
It's like, remember when the first airplanes took flight? People must have been floored. And now look, we're like, ugh, delayed again.
Right. What once felt impossible is now totally normal. Could space travel really become that commonplace?
Maybe. Maybe. It's kind of mind-blowing. It's not just the technology, is it? It's like this whole new way of thinking, like anything is possible.
It's that spark, that spark of imagination. That's what SpaceX has. They dream big and then they go for it.
It's like Kennedy said, we choose to do these things not because they're easy, but because they are hard.
Exactly. And honestly, in a world with so many problems, it's pretty inspiring to see that kind of drive. It gives you hope, right?
Totally. So where do we go from here? What's the big takeaway from all of this whole rocket catching thing?
I think it's that the future of space exploration, it's not some far-off dream. It's happening right now.
Yeah.
And it's only going to get wilder from here.
Who knows? Maybe someday, instead of just reading about it, you'll be up there yourself, looking back at Earth. It's pretty amazing when you think about it. It all started with someone asking, what if?
What if we could catch a rocket? Sometimes that's all it takes. A little bit of curiosity, a little bit of audacity, and who knows what you can achieve.